Unexplained Hauntings, 3 spine-chilling true stories where cursed victims were left defenseless. Julia had always heard the whispers of horror stories blooming under the surface of the quaint suburb of Maplewood. But when she began to find Lily's sketches of shadowy figures littering the house, the dread bell rang louder than ever. "Mom, they talk to me," Lily chirped one evening, wide-eyed and oblivious, her small fingers clutching one of her eerie creation's dark figures with gaping mouths and jagged shadows. "They say things, bad things." It was easy to laugh it off. Kids had wild imaginations, right? But then the noises began. Late at night, muffled whispers ghosted through the still air outside the house. A scratching sound that made the hair on her arms stand straight. Julia would lie in bed, heart racing, listening to the sounds echoing into the darkness. Surely just a raccoon, she told herself. Surely. It only got worse. Static-laden phone calls invaded her quiet nights, filled with distorted murmurs that chilled her to the bone. They felt like clawing fingers, creeping into her sanity. The community that once felt warm suddenly morphed into a realm of claustrophobic fear. People she often waved to now avoided her gaze, their faces etched with a silent acknowledgement of something terrible lurking just beneath the surface. "Is everything okay, Julia?" Mrs. Henderson, her neighbor, asked too softly to mask her concern. Her eyes darted around as if the shadows held secrets they weren't ready to bear witness to. Julia shrugged off the unease that blanketed Maplewood, convincing herself it was just anxiety playing tricks on her tired mind. But the surrounding whispers, suffocated glances, confirmed her creeping paranoia. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Tension racked her body as the town churned out stories. The disappearance of a local boy struck a brutal chord. Fear wrapped itself around her heart, squeezing tighter with every new report. The curse, they whispered, a tale as old as Maplewood itself, began to surface in hushed tones. Once a sanctuary, her home started feeling like a trap, walls whispering ominously with each creak. The worst revelation shattered her world. One evening, as she watched her daughter's innocent playing, Julia noticed that one of the shadowy figures bore an uncanny resemblance to Roger, the man next door, who always had a kind word and a bright smile. The cracking facade of trust ripped apart in an instant, leaving her spiraling into a chasm of dread. What if he were more sinister than his friendly exterior suggested? Her blood ran cold as she pieced together the hours Lily would spend with him in the backyard, laughing, drawing while she thought they were harmless. The threads of terror pulled tighter around them both. The darkness wasn't a mere whisper now. It stalked closer, and Julia felt a panic claw at her, urging her to protect Lily from a lurking malevolence hiding in plain sight. A sharp knock echoed through the silence, a brisk sound that shattered the quiet night. Frozen in fear, Julia's heart raced as she recognized the unmistakable weight of dread descending upon them. The knock rumbled again, louder this time, as if demanding entrance. Their lives teetered on a knife's edge, and somewhere in the shadows, the true horrors of Maplewood began to unfurl. Julia's breath hitched as the second knock reverberated through the walls, each sound a reminder that they were not alone. She glanced at Lily, who seemed utterly unfazed, absorbed in her colorful drawings as if the dark intentions moving in the night held no power over her child. "Stay here," Julia barely whispered, forcing the words past her trembling lips. The staccato rhythm of her heart pounded in her ears as she tiptoed to the door, each cautious step dragging her closer to a chilling confrontation. The intoxicating mix of fear and protective instinct drove her forward. Her mind raced, compiling the countless horror stories she had heard, the ones where a gentle knock masked something sinister. The moonlight bathed the living room in a ghostly glow, illuminating the fading wallpaper and creating eerie shadows that danced around her. She stood frozen by the door, white-knuckled and paralyzed. The knock came again, an insistent thud that made the very frame of the house tremble. "Who is it?" she called out, her voice trembling, straining to maintain its composure. "Nothing." Just an inhospitable silence that swallowed her words whole. A chill scraped against her skin, a whisper of malice brushing past as the oppressive weight of fear rounded her thoughts. Maybe it was just Roger, playing some cruel prank? But no, it couldn't be. The sketches, the whispers, the growing unease of the townspeople all loomed like a blight over her rational thoughts. "Mom?" Lily's voice drifted from the living room, pulling Julia back from the maw of paranoia. The innocence in that sound broke through her spiraling fear, but as she turned, the brief sense of safety faded, replaced by an unsettling sensation creeping up her spine like icy fingers. Something moved in the corner of her eye, darting past the window. Heart nearly leaping from her chest, Julia whirled around to face it, but there was nothing. Just the flutter of leaves outside, stirring in the night. The hollow sound of silence returning intensified every noise in the house. With trembling hands, she grasped the doorknob, intending to pry it open, feeling both sick and electric with fear. As she turned the knob slowly, a series of frantic scratches erupted on the other side. Like nails dragging across the wood, punctuating the tension with a primal threat. Julia recoiled, stepping back with wide eyes. What was out there? "Mom!" Lily's anxiety surged through the cracks of the door, snapping Julia's focus back. Panic twisted her stomach. She had to keep Lily safe. Still frozen, she glanced again at her daughter's drawings on the floor. The ominous shapes swirling with shadows now seemed alive, watching, beckoning her to remember. Suddenly, the small window was obscured, darkness pooling like ink around the edges. Lily's laughter drifted, innocent yet haunting, echoing the words that Julia had dreaded. "They want to play. You have to stay inside," Julia shouted urgently, firm yet panicked, just as the door rattled violently, demanding entrance. "Open the door, Julia." The voice called. It was a voice she barely recognized, distorted through the wood, layered thick with layers of something dark. Was it Roger? Had he been hiding a horrifying side all along? Bile rose in her throat, fear suffocating her thoughts. If she opened that door, would she unleash something pure evil into her home? Or worse, would it get to Lily first? The choice loomed before her like a descending blade. The knocking ceased abruptly, plunging them into an unbearable silence that felt like the prelude to something unimaginable. Darkness coiled around them, filled with the uncertainty of what lay beyond that door. And somewhere amid the chaos, a chilling whisper slithered past her ear, "Let me in." Julia's body quaked with dread. She felt time stretch thin, held by a terrible, breathless anticipation. What would happen next? The silence clawed at Julia, her thoughts swirling like smoke in a windless room. She could feel the uneven, cold air brush against her skin, a harsh reminder that something amiss lingered just outside her reach. The chilling whisper still echoed in her ears, pushing her from fear to desperation. "Mom!" Lily's voice broke in again, tight with anxiety. "What's wrong?" Julia's heart raced. She had to think straight. There was no chance she would let whatever was out there, whatever was trying to penetrate the safety of her home, harm Lily. She risked a glance out the window, adrenaline spiking as she quickly scanned the dimly lit yard. The shadows danced under the wavering moonlight, casting elongated shapes that twisted unnaturally. An unease snaked through her gut, pinching harder as she looked back to the door. "Lily, stay behind the couch," Julia commanded, her voice barely above a whisper. She saw her daughter nod, eyes wide as saucers. The innocence that had once shielded Lily from the darkness was now withdrawn, overshadowed by growing fears. Julia pressed her back against the wall beside the door, clutching the doorknob, her fingers trembling like leaves in a storm. She was right at the edge. Did she dare to open the door? With a swift inhale, she threw all caution to the night. Was it Roger out there? The thought propelled her to act, her hand twisted the knob, preparing to unveil the horror beyond, but, just as she moved, another knock landed hard, splintering the air. It was different this time, like a hammer striking the wood, insistent and furious, vibrating through her bones. "Let me in, Julia." The voice came again, deeper this time, a guttural growl that sent ice racing down her spine. It was no longer just a plea, it was a demand, wrapped in rage. The walls around her felt like they were closing in. Julia's thoughts spiraled. The sound of the knocking melded with Lily's nervous laughter, taking on an almost sinister tone. They danced together in her mind, the innocent child and the haunted force, as if trying to seduce her into that open door. "Mom!" Lily cried again, her voice mingling with something darker creeping toward them. "Stay there!" Julia snapped, panic clawing at her throat. She turned sharply, pulling the door tighter against her body as though she could physically shield Lily from whatever lay beyond. "What are you doing?" The voice rumbled again, its tone shifting like a predator prowling for a weakness. "Let me in, I can help you." Rage and fear pooled inside, each louder than the other, making it nearly impossible for Julia to think straight. She steadied her breath and looked at the door, shuddering slightly. "No!" Julia shouted, each syllable a defiance against the noise clamoring for her soul. "You're not coming in." An unsettling silence loomed for a heartbeat before the door itself seemed to moan, creaking as if alive. The shadows danced again, she could see them, shifting and moving as if mocking her mortification. "You don't know what you're dealing with," it hissed, the voice rasping like dried leaves scraping against the ground. "Let me help you, you'll regret this." Julia's grip tightened on the knob. The warped notion that letting her guard down could unleash something monstrous gripped her, leaving no room for doubt. With one swift decision, she turned away from the door and marked a quick stride toward Lily. As she crouched to pull her daughter close, a sudden crash exploded through the house, a window shattering somewhere behind them, the shards flying like jagged stars, glittering maliciously in the dark. "Mom!" Lily screamed, recoiling in fear. Adrenaline flooded Julia's veins, hardening her resolve. Breathless and wide-eyed, she peered around their little sanctuary, glancing nervously at every dark corner. There was no use begging the darkness. It was toying with them, luring them deeper into its nightmarish grasp. "Maybe it's time to leave," Julia whispered, gripping her daughter tightly, fear thrumming through her body, pushing her toward action. Just then, icy fingers brushed against the back of her neck, chilling her right to the core. The door rattled once more, shaking with a force beyond reason. "What have you done?" The voice chanted, both groaning and pleading. "You can't escape me." Terror surged through Julia, every hair on her body standing on end. "We have to go now." But as she turned to the hallway, a figure emerged from the shadows, its form barely defined yet dripping with malice and dread. The air thickened with impending doom as she began to back away. What had she unleashed? As thoughts swirled, an ear-splitting scream echoed, shattering their fragile moment of hope, a scream that belonged to neither of them. Who else was there? The figure loomed larger, a dark silhouette against the dim light of the hallway. Julia's breath hitched in her throat, each gasp heavier than the last. The air thickened with a scent of decay, and she felt her heart thud hard against her chest. "Mom!" Lily clung to her leg, eyes wide, brimming with tears. The little girl could sense the dread creeping over them, filling the space with a desperate weight. "Stay behind me," Julia whispered, the conviction in her voice breaking into a quiver. She knew the creature before them, whether it was real or a figment of their shared fear, was a harbinger of something unfathomable. The figure shifted slightly, its outline unfurling as if it were made of the shadows themselves. A distortion twisted in its features, unrecognizable yet hauntingly familiar. Julia's mind raced. What did it want? What did it know? She felt a wicked pull, like strings tugging at her sanity, unearthing buried memories long since suppressed. Suddenly, the lights flickered violently, casting strobing flashes that created a cacophony of horror in the room. In less than a heartbeat, the whispers of the house layered over each other, filling the air with disjointed voices. "You let me in, I'm here for you, you can't escape." Julia's resolve wavered. She pulled Lily closer, shielding her eyes from the chaos. "We're leaving," she insisted, biting her lip to stall the flood of hope that screamed for release, but as they moved, more figures seeped from the walls, gliding fluidly across the floor. They wore expressions of agony, mouths stretched wide as if trying to scream but choked back. Julia's throat tightened. Their presence twisted the air, puncturing her mind with images of despair and regret. Images from the past. People she had lost. "Mom, please." Lily whimpered, breaking Julia from her daze. Julia locked eyes with her daughter, that innocent gaze reminding her of what was at stake. "Lily, we need to go to the front door." "It's the only way," Julia said, voice firm but laced with fear. "Just hold on to me." With each step toward the hallway, the figures edged closer, morphing as shadows did under a flickering bulb. Julia felt their breath, cool and clammy. Ghostly hands stretched out, fingers like tendrils desperate to pull them into the depths. Just when Julia thought she'd break, sparks of anger ignited within her, the rage of a mother protecting her child. "Get away from us!" she screamed, her voice wailing like a siren. The shadows quivered, recoiling momentarily as if disturbed by the sound. The hallway felt like a haunted tunnel, walls closing in as she ushered Lily ahead of her. Each step was a battle against time, against the shadows clawing for them. Julia's mind screamed for answers. Why was this happening? What had joined them in their home? Outside, the world was dark, no streetlights, only the pitch-black void deepening with every footfall toward the door. Julia kept glancing over her shoulder, waiting for whatever shadows had taken form to lunge. Suddenly, the front door swung open, the piercing howl from the darkness beckoning them forward. A recess in the night, an invitation to run. But standing in the doorframe was a silhouette, a figure all too familiar, its voice dripping with honeyed malice. "Did you really think you could escape?" it crooned, a grin spreading across its mirthless face. It was Roger. Julia's stomach dropped. "No," she whispered, dread hanging unspoken between them. Was he a pawn, held captive by the very nightmares she tried to flee? Lily pulled away slightly, sensing danger in the air. "Mom, what do we do?" She trembled. Before Julia could answer, the door behind them slammed shut, trapping them in both shadows and light. Trapped with no way to go back, and uncertain of what lay ahead. How could they possibly survive this nightmare? Julia's heart raced as she faced Roger, that twisted grin snapping open wounds she thought long healed. The shadows behind him pulsed with eagerness, their grip taking on a life of its own, demanding their tribute, their terror. "Mom! He's not right." Lily's voice broke through Julia's haze, her little frame shaking with fear. "Stay close," Julia hissed, pressing a hand to Lily's back, nudging her toward the stairwell. But every instinct told her to run, yet her feet felt glued to the floor, paralyzed in uncertainty. Roger stepped forward, the darkness folding around him like a shroud. "You've forgotten, haven't you?" His voice dripped like honey, sickly sweet yet laced with impending doom. "You can never escape me." She bared her teeth, remembering the warmth of family gatherings, laughter that felt like light, a stark contrast to the cold blackness now in front of her. "I want to let you take her," Julia spat out, fury igniting a spark of courage deep within, but the darkness laughed, swirling with anticipation. Ghostly figures behind Roger pressed against the walls, faces emerging like shells from the ocean, memories morphed into nightmares. Their silent screams clawed at Julia's resolve, whispering secrets just out of earshot. Julia, one voice distinct, piercing through the chaos. "You always wanted to know the truth." She clutched Lily tighter, shoulders trembling. She didn't want to know the truth. The shadows writhed, beckoning her to yield, to submit, to join the tormented souls hovering around the man she once loved. "What did you do?" Julia demanded, her voice barely above a whisper, the question a desperate plea echoing in the thick air. She felt the weight of regret, the crushing burden of choices that led her here. I opened a door you locked. Roger's smile widened, his eyes gleaming with something sinister. You let me in that night and now, I'm here to claim what's mine. Julia felt the ground shift beneath her, the walls pulsing, the air thickening with long-buried memories, a time when their family was whole, before the terrible accident, before darkness seeped into their lives. And now, it was back to collect its due. We can leave, she cried, pulling on Lily's small hand, trying to back away. But there was nowhere to go, the door closed tight like the jaws of a predator. Mom! Lily's voice shrilled, pulling Julia's attention. The figures shifted, twisting towards them like a swarm, hands reaching eagerly. Julia felt their chill as if they were brushing through her hair, pulling at her clothes, desperate to drag them into the abyss. Stay away! Julia yelled, her voice shattering the tension, trembling with both fear and anger. She stepped forward, ready to defend her daughter no matter the cost. We'll fight. At that moment, she realized she was not entirely powerless. There was strangeness in the air, a flickering at the edge of her vision, the shadows of those lost lingering like the scent of rain before a storm. Perhaps they were not all enemies. Listen! Julia shouted, grasping the energy that surged inside her. You can't have us. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. The shadows halted, lurching back as if struck. Roger's grin faltered. Foolish, foolish girl, he hissed as the dark aura around him twisted, thrumming with a kind of menace that felt all-consuming. Julia felt the others, the lost souls, draw closer. They started to whisper in soft tones, their voices a symphony of anguish and desire. Help us, for we are trapped, Mom. Lily tugged at her sleeve, eyes wide with desperation. What's happening? Before Julia could respond, the shadows surged again, coiling like serpents, their cold breath wrapping around Julia. Fear gripped her. How could she fight something that had entwined itself into her very memories? As the darkness pressed in, Julia remembered one word from her childhood stories. A way out. A name that could shift fate. Unbind us. Julia shouted, her voice fierce against the rising storm of dread, and for a moment, the house trembled as if it heard her plea, but would the shadows listen? No sooner had she voiced her declaration than a tremor rippled through the very ground beneath their feet. Then, slowly, the floorboards groaned and illuminated with a faint, flickering light. Was it a sign of hope? Or was it the beginning of something far worse? In that charged silence, Julia felt uncertainty coil in her gut. The next choice loomed heavy. What lay beneath those boards, and how deep would they have to descend to confront their past demons? As she looked at her daughter, the answer hung precariously in the air. But the figures were not done yet. Choose wisely, Roger whispered, laughter reverberating around them as the ground pulsed with anticipation. It was time to decide, stay and fight, or take the step into the unknown. What would they find in the dark depths below? With a shuddering breath, Julia stepped back, the flickering light growing more intense beneath the floorboards. It felt alive, pulsating with promise and dread. The room swirled around her, the shadows stretching, seeking to ensnare her thoughts. Mom, I'm scared. Lily's voice was small, but the fear in it echoed like a bell in the suffocating darkness. Julia felt a fresh surge of adrenaline. She knew she had to be strong for Lily, even as her heart screamed for escape. Me too, sweetheart, Julia whispered, forcing a brave smile even as her insides twisted. But we can't let him win. Roger stepped closer, his presence pressing against them like a weight. You think strength will save you? His laughter pricked at her skin, chilling her to the bone. This is where courage gets you nowhere. The phantom figures behind him began to move, their translucent forms swaying gently, a morbid ballet of the lost. They reached for the light, drawn to it while their mouths opened and closed in a silent scream. The same endless hunger flickered in their eyes, a chaotic blend of despair and longing. Julia turned on her heel, the air around her thickening. Not today. She shouted, her voice ripping through the oppressive atmosphere. "You won't trap us." As if her words were a spark, the ground beneath them shuddered violently, the floorboards trembling like the wings of a trapped bird. The whispering shadows seemed to howl, a chorus of sorrow and rage that sent icy fingers crawling up her spine. The shadows recoiled, as if her defiance had stung. But Roger stepped forward again, unfazed. "You think light can hold back the darkness? This house is alive with secrets, and those secrets belong to all of us." The pulsing light beneath the floorboards brightened, casting jagged shadows that danced wildly on the walls. The fading memories of laughter and warmth began to bleed into the present, intertwining, like a haunting melody she couldn't shake. Were they the echoes of her past or the wails of the damned? "Julia?" A familiar voice cut through the noise, gentle yet urgent. It was a soothing sound, but it brought a wave of panic. "Help us please." "Stop!" Julia gasped, clenching her fists. Her memories twisted painfully as the figures surged forward, their desperation almost palpable. "I can't help you. Help us or join us." The shadows closed in, their twisted forms now more defined, more desperate. The voices ebbed and flowed like the tide, each plea piercing deeper into her heart. Lily trembled beside her, clearly frightened and confused. "Mom, I don't want to be here." Julia gritted her teeth, striving to maintain control in this oppressive storm of terror. "I need you to trust me, Lily," she urged, voice steadier than she felt. "On the count of 3, we run to the light together." Lily nodded, eyes wide and shimmering, ready to leap into the abyss or break the cycle that held them captive. They shared a moment, a heartbeat in the storm before Julia counted down, even as Roger's laughter thrummed in her ears. 1, 2, 3. They surged forward, the eerie light swallowing them as they leaped onto the glowing floorboards. But instead of falling, the light consumed them, wrapping them in a warm embrace. Then and Julia felt at the grasp of something very different. No longer in control, she and Lily were swept away, cascading into the depths of a chasm that opened beneath them, propelled by dark tendrils that sought their pulse. "Mom! Where are we going?" Lily's voice broke through the burgeoning panic. "Hold on tight!" Julia screamed, the darkness curling around them like a smothering shroud, her grip on Lily tightening. She felt herself slipping, the glow of hope dimming. The chaos below whispered promises of knowledge, of truth long buried. But as they fell, fear clawed at Julia's heart. What awaited them in the depths? And as they descended into the dark, the whispers grew louder, filling her mind, spiraling out of control until one name broke free from the cacophony, crashing like thunder. "Julia!" the darkness answered. What had she done? The radiant glow flickered one last time before it faded into obscurity, and the silence that followed felt more sinister than the void itself. What truths lay buried waiting to be unearthed, and would they be strong enough to resist the horrors of the past? As the darkness enveloped them, Julia felt her heartbeat reverberate in her chest, a frantic drum echoing in the void. It was cold here, much colder than the panic that now coursed through her veins. The chasm seemed endless, and every second that ticked by felt like an hour. "Mom!" Lily's voice pierced through the oppressive blackness, a fragile thread pulling Julia's focus back. "I can't see. I can't breathe. Just hold on." Julia shouted, adrenaline fueling her desperation. She tightened her grip, feeling Lily's small hand trembling in hers. Around them, shadows twisted and writhed, their whispers morphing into a sickening cacophony that threatened to drown out everything else. What had they released? The ground beneath them shifted, gnarled roots snaking through the darkness, grasping at their ankles like desperate hands. Julia could feel the tendrils of dread tightening around her, pulling them deeper into the abyss. "Stay close. We'll get through this." Though fear gnawed at her, she fought against the deep-seated need to give in and let the darkness take them. Suddenly, a sliver of light sliced through the darkness, brighter than before. It pulsated and expanded, illuminating grotesque shapes in the black, figures caught between realms lost, wretched souls who floated just out of reach. Their mouths moved soundlessly, trapped in a perpetual scream, every tortured face a mirror of Julia's deepest fears. "Mom! Look!" Lily's tremor-filled words ignited a spark of alarm within Julia. The light flickered, revealing the transparency of Roger standing amid the chaos, watching them with a twisted smile that promised torment. He pointed downward, and the gaping maw of shadows yawned wider beneath them. "What do you want?" Julia screamed, her voice rising over the horror, desperate to reclaim some control. Roger shifted, his eyes glimmering with malice. "Your choice, Julia. Join them or leave this place and never return." "Don't listen to him, Lily," Julia shouted, panic clawing at her instincts. She felt the pull of the shadows growing, trying to coax her in with promises spun from old regrets and bitter losses. "Just keep holding on." She steeled herself against the feeble echoes of her own past, fighting to keep them anchored in the present. Then she felt a surge of icy air that swept past her, dragging Lily closer to the edge of a swirling pit. The light flickered again, a heartbeat missed, illuminating a path that twisted back toward the surface. "Mom!" Lily cried, her little fingers slipping as the rooting darkness beckoned. "No! I won't let you." Julia's voice was fierce as she yanked Lily back, fighting against the pull. She felt a burning sensation in her chest, as if her heart was fraying at the edges. "We're getting out." With a primal roar, Julia forged forward into the light, dragging Lily along as the shadows screeched in fury. They burst through the veil of darkness into a hollow cavern flooded with an ethereal glow, the air thick with moisture and forgotten memories. The beauty of it glittered like shattered glass, mesmerizing yet treacherous. Echoes of laughter danced around them, sweet and comforting, but Julia could hear the underlying shrieks of despair hidden just beneath the surface. "Look, Mom, it's a way out." Lily pointed ahead, her innocent optimism cutting through Julia's anxiety. But doubt seeped in. What if this were just another trap? As they moved forward, the ground trembled beneath them, erupting into laughter and cries, the shadows swirling around their feet. "Hurry!" Julia urged, the urgency clawing at her throat. Just as they reached the glimmering exit, she hesitated, glancing back. Behind them, Roger stood among the shadows, no longer smiling. His eyes burned a deep crimson as he hissed, "The dead always follow their own." With a cold shiver racing down her spine, Julia turned, gripping Lily's hand tighter than ever. "Run!" As they dashed toward freedom, the chilling realization dawned, escape might not be the end. For every secret they uncovered, for every light they followed, the shadows would always linger, hungering for their return. What awaited them on the other side? Would they emerge whole, or would they find themselves forever changed by the darkness that had whispered their names? The moment they broke through the glowing threshold, a heavy sigh echoed within the cavern's walls. Julia felt the air shift, a stinging sweetness settling around them that mixed with their fresh fears. It was a stark contrast to the suffocating blackness they'd just escaped, but there was no comfort here. "Mom? Where are we?" Lily's voice quivered, a note of trepidation seeping through her innocence. Julia surveyed the space around them. The cavern's beauty had a surreal quality, its walls adorned with twinkling crystals that seemed to sing and whisper as they shifted. Yet despite the ethereal charm, every instinct told Julia that something was horribly wrong. "Stay close," Julia replied, her heart pounding in her chest. She sensed the laughter of the shadows flickering to life around them, coiling like serpents. Whispers tangled in the air, where words morphed into maddening echoes, both alluring and terrifying. They took hesitant steps deeper into the cavern, the glow casting elongated shadows in front of them. Each beat of Julia's heart grew louder, synchronized with the shadows that danced just out of sight. Suddenly, the light began to fade, a dark wave rolling over the glittering crystals. "No!" Julia cried, pulling Lily protectively against her as they stumbled back. The shadows lurked closer, hungry and restless. The laughter transformed into taunting shrieks, and Julia's stomach twisted with anxiety. "Mom," Lily's voice cracked, "I don't like this." "Neither do I," Julia whispered fiercely, shaking her head, trying to swallow the panic that threatened to erupt. Then came a rustling sound, a familiar shuffling that made her heart drop. "Roger!" Julia hissed, eyeing the darkness that enveloped the mouth of the cavern. Emerging from the shadows, Roger's figure bent under the weight of the abyss. His eyes glowed unnaturally, swirling with chaos, as he smirked at them from the heart of the dark. "Made it out, did you?" he crooned, moving closer, his voice a seductive purr laced with mockery. "But you know the light is deceptive. How long do you think you can keep it?" Julia gripped Lily tighter. "What do you want from us?" "To witness what's about to unfold. You see, it's not just you who has escaped." Roger's smile widened, revealing sharp teeth that caught the fading light. "You've come to this place, and it craves your essence, Julia. You can't run from the darkness inside you." The shadows surged forward, and Julia felt a wave of cold wash over her. Tendrils of darkness curled around her legs, crawling up to her waist. "Lily! Hold on!" she shouted, struggling to pull them free. "No!" Lily screamed, eyes wide with terror. She looked up at Roger, as if sensing the danger he posed. "You're a bad man." The words hung in the air, clear and cutting. Roger's expression faltered, just for a flicker of a second, before he regained his composure. "Oh, I am much more than a man, little girl. I am what you fear. I am what you will become. Join me." His voice twisted, echoing through the cavern like a nightmare made real. The walls trembled, crystals shattering into a million sharp pieces. Julia felt the weight of despair and foreboding pull at her heart. The laughter escalated into a deafening roar, drowning out their cries. With a sudden surge of instinct, Julia shoved herself and Lily toward a small crevice in the wall, a sliver of hope that glittered with promise, though trepidation clawed at her thoughts. "It's our only chance." They plunged into the narrow space just as a shadow lunged forward, missing them by a breath. Winding through the darkness, Julia pushed forward, heart racing as the suffocating fear settled in, but even as they squeezed through, she could still hear the whispers calling out to her, entreating her to join them, to surrender to the darkness. "Mom! I want to go home." Lily sobbed, her hands trembling. "Shoo, I know, baby." Julia gritted her teeth, refusing to let despair take them. Just a little farther, but the voices grew louder, and in the distance, she saw flickering lights that felt hauntingly familiar. They beckoned, creating a path of false safety that drew her in. Julia's breath hitched as dread filled her bones. What if the shadows were right? Would they ever truly escape the darkness? Just as she grasped Lily's hand tighter, she felt ice wrap around her feet, holding them in place, pulling them down. The light flickered once more, and she looked back toward the chasm. Eyes gleamed in the darkness, waiting, whispering together. Forever the icy grip tightened, threatening to drag them back. Would they flee or succumb? The choice was slipping away, and fast. What lay ahead? A blinding light? Or an eternity of shadows? As they lunged deeper into the narrow crevice, desperation fueling their hurried movements, Julia's heart raced. The icy grip around her feet was relentless, a bitter reminder of the darkness clawing to reclaim them. "Just keep moving," she shouted, though the sound felt muted, swallowed by the cavernous gloom that pressed in like a vice. Lily clung to her side, breathing heavily. "I can't, Mom. It's too tight. Just a bit farther," Julia urged, biting back her own fear. The light ahead pulsed with an eerie brilliance, promising a sanctuary that felt more like a trick. Each step felt heavier, a creeping dread anchoring her down, as though the shadows were sapping her strength with every inch they moved. But then came the whispers, louder, more distinct. "Julia, join us. Become one with the shadows." They reverberated through the crevice like a sinister melody, drawing her attention back to that chilling figure of Roger. He had not followed them into the tight space, but something about his presence lingered, a dark cloud hanging heavy in her mind. "We don't have much time." Julia forced her voice to be loud, trying to drown out the hypnotic calls of the cavern, panicking at the thought of what could happen if they were trapped. Just as they reached the exit, the stone walls closed in, the passage narrowing until it barely fit them. Julia spotted flickering shadows darting behind her, teasing her about the safety they'd yet to find. "No! No!" She pushed forward, urgency clawing at her throat. Suddenly, they burst into a wide chamber, an echoing void illuminated by the soft glow of crystalline formations. It was breathtaking, but the beauty was jarring against the frantic thump of her heartbeat. The crystals here looked almost alive, sending shimmers of light racing across the walls like nervous spirits. Yet, it was not peace that greeted them. As the chamber filled with light, the laughter returned, sickeningly sweet and mocking. Julia spun in a panic, searching for an exit but finding none, only a great abyss yawning before them, shadows swirling just out of reach. "Lily," she grasped her daughter's hand with grim determination. "We're going to find a way out." Then came a deep rumble, shaking the walls and causing the crystals to tremble and fall, scattering across the ground like broken dreams. The ground quaked beneath their feet. Julia's breaths quickened as something began to take shape in that vast emptiness. A massive shadow unfurled from the other side, a grotesque form emerging from the dark. It was the amalgamation of darkness itself, twisted and tormented. "You've wandered far from home, Julia." The voice was a chorus of screams, echoing in an unsettling harmony, and it reached into her, promising to unleash her hidden fears. Julia fought against the tendrils of despair wrapping around her, but the shadows surged, unleashing a wave of cold that raced through her veins. "No! We want to go with you," she shouted defiantly, though doubt crept into her mind, gnawing at her resolve. Lily trembled beside her, eyes wide as she grasped at her mother's hand. "Mom, I'm scared," Julia squeezed back, her heart racing. "Stay with me." She could feel the darkness trying to seep into their souls, dragging them closer to despair. But why was she fighting? Why not surrender and save Lily some pain? The vision of Roger reappeared, his ravenous grin cutting through the chaos. "You are already lost, Julia. You just haven't accepted it yet." The chamber pulsed with life, shadows dancing in frenzied excitement. Julia felt the walls closing in, the atmosphere heavy with an oppressive weight that made it hard to breathe. "Fight!" She rasped at herself and at Lily, a desperate plea to stay rooted in reality. "Please fight." Just then, a glimmer of light pierced through from behind, drawing her attention. Could they escape? Or would the shadows win? Julia hesitated, entranced by the shimmering glow that felt almost like a beacon compared to the chilling chaos surrounding them. In a sudden rush of adrenaline, she pulled Lily toward the light, desperate to escape the tightening grip of the darkness. But as they raced forward, the laughter crescendoed, wrapping around them like barbed wire. "Running will get you nowhere," the voice bellowed, vibrating through every surface. Claudia felt the shadows reach for them, caressing her skin like a lover before ripping her apart. Ahead, the glow pulsed with life, but was it salvation or another trap? As they barreled toward the light, Julia felt the shadows gnawing, ready to claim their next victims. Would they reach safety, or would they plunge deeper into despair? The answer loomed, just out of reach. Julia's heart pounded in her chest as she pulled Lily closer, racing towards the swirling light ahead, each heartbeat echoing her determination to escape. The darkness surged behind them, a relentless tide pushing at their backs, clawing to reclaim its lost prey. Julia refused to look back, emboldened by the fierce love she felt for her daughter. "Hold on tight," she called, her voice slicing through the encroaching darkness like a lifeline. The light beckoned them closer, vibrant and alive, promising escape from the nightmares that haunted their every moment. But shadows whipped around them, their voices rising like an ominous chorus. "You can't escape your fate, Julia. The dark will always find you." With each word, Julia felt a familiar weight pressing down on her soul, a realization that the darkness was not just around them but within her too, a part of her very being. A seed of doubt unfurled inside, whispering insidious thoughts. Maybe they could never truly escape. "Mom!" Lily's panicked voice pulled her back to the present. The light flickered as they drew nearer, shimmering like a beacon of hope. "We can do this!" Julia shouted, fighting against the tide of despair that sought to pull them under. The light brightened in response, revealing a pathway that shimmered with warmth. Together, they surged forward, determination driving them despite the shadows clawing at their heels, desperate to ensnare them once more. "Fight with me, sweetness," Julia urged, squeezing Lily's hand tighter. They continued their headlong rush, the warmth enveloping them like a divine embrace. But as they neared the threshold, Roger's dark silhouette emerged once more, stepping into their line of sight, blocking their way with an almost lazy confidence. "You think you can outrun your past?" he sneered, darkness swirling around him with every taunt. Julia clenched her jaw, anger igniting within her. "Yes, we can. You won't take her," Julia shouted, defiance filling her each word as if it could push back the shadows. "Mom, I'm scared," Lily whispered, her voice trembling. And in that instant, Julia could see the fear reflected in her daughter's eyes, fear that mirrored her own. "Trust me, Lily. We are stronger together, and we will not let him take us," Julia declared, the strength of their bond acting as a weapon against the haunting shadows. With renewed resolve, they charged forward, merging into the light. As they crossed the threshold, the shadows recoiled, screeching in rage and despair, but the light wrapped around them, shielding them from the dark's grasp. In an instant, the world shifted, darkness dissolved, revealing a familiar warmth surrounding them. They were outside now, the cool night air brushing against their cheeks, the house behind them silent. "Did we make it?" Lily asked, her voice small but hopeful. "Yes. We're free," Julia exclaimed, lifting her daughter into her arms, spinning them together in joy. But as they stood there, bathed in the glow of the moonlight, shadows lingered at the edges, watching. Julia felt a shiver run down her spine, not from fear but from the realization that the darkness would always be a part of her. "Mom!" Lily's excited voice broke through her thoughts. Julia looked down to see her daughter, radiant in the moonlight, vivid and alive. "Can we go home? I want hot chocolate." Julia chuckled, brushing a stray hair from Lily's forehead, marveling at the innocence still shining in her daughter's eyes. "Yes, sweet girl. Let's make the biggest mugs. You did so well tonight." As they turned to walk away, the whispers began to fade, the shadows retreating into the night. "Julia," a soft voice called, echoing from the depths of her memory. "Leave us in peace," she whispered to the air, a decision settling in her heart. She would carry the darkness with her, not as a slave but as a guardian, a reminder of what they had overcome. With Lily's hand firmly in hers, Julia stepped away from the edge of fear. This was their new beginning. But just as they reached the street lamp, illuminating their path ahead, a loud crack shattered the silence from the direction of the house, and then nothing. Julia stared back, the shadows retreating yet again, a bitter reminder that though they had escaped the horror of Maplewood, the darkness would always be waiting in the corners of their lives. Together, they would face whatever came next, and they would be ready this time. Now, if you loved this spine-tingling story, you need to subscribe immediately to this channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that dive deep into the heart of terror. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep the thrills coming. I want to hear from you. Flood that comments section with your reactions and theories about what you think will happen next. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Let us keep building this community of true horror fans together.